Hello, New Brunswick. Charlie Cradaville here with the New Brunswick Today podcast. And today is our first episode, and I want to welcome my first special guest, Dave Schatz. Dave is a freelance reporter whose work has appeared in the USA Today network, and he's actually our business reporter here at New Brunswick Today, who's been covering commercial real estate here in the Hub City. Dave, welcome to the first episode.
Great to be here, Charlie.
So, you just did a big story about a new business opening right near our train station in New Brunswick. This is tell us about it. It's a food and restaurant and bar, but not just any.
Yeah, the Red's Beer Garden. I think it's, of course, they're still opened in Newark, across from Prudential Center, and I think they're going to do really well. I'm a little disappointed about the rent is as high as more than $22,000 a month with the concessionaires permit.
Yeah. So before we go any further, let's talk about this site. It's a relatively new building. It was built right around the time we started New Brunswick Today, and it was Brother Jimmy's Barbecue for the past several years. They left town in 2018, closed up shop, and it sat vacant for a while. It's actually owned by a public entity, the New Brunswick Parking Authority, and so they are the landlord of this, essentially restaurant space. Brother Jimmy's could not afford to pay a rent increase, and so they asked for to get a break. They got a break for a few months, and then they left. Rent was one of the reasons, but maybe not the whole story. Tell us what you learned about, the parking authority being a landlord and how it fits in with this place. And also, tell me what you mean by a concessionaire's permit.
Well, the concession, they did not have to purchase a traditional liquor license. This space, which is owned, of course, by the New Brunswick Parking Authority, the realtors advertised right from the beginning that they were that a liquor license was included, and while there may have been a delay in getting, it was actually a concessionaire's permit. There was a delay in getting that.
Because it's public property, right? So that you don't have to get one of those really expensive liquor licenses. This is the same type of thing that happens at, for instance, Rutgers Stadium, right? Because it's public property, you don't have to get a liquor license from the town, but you can get this special concessionaire's permit through the entity that owns it, in this case the parking authority, and so that is a different arrangement. It's not your typical liquor license. And tell us, the grand total is $22,000 for both the concessionaire's permit monthly fee and the rent?
$22,115.
Wow. And so that's what they're paying right now. Wow.
It was $1,228 to utilize the state concessionaire's permit. Unless that changed at all. There was, what happened with, do you know why there was a delay with we're not sure if that's why they did not.
The reason for the delay. The parking authority said that, getting that concessionaire's permit was taking more time than expected. They get it from the state alcohol and beverage control, and that division, I guess, took more time than expected to give that approval. But the lease, of course, said the tenant doesn't have to pay any rent until that comes through. So they were, they were basically had all the stuff in there for the store, for the restaurant, but weren't able to open until recently. So finally they got the go-ahead. They opened for good on August the 19th.
Yeah, they're paying $27 a square foot, but then they have to add on about $4.50 a square foot for taxes, common area, another $2.50 per square foot for the common area and the maintenance. So again, I'm long on Reds because I think the company It's partially family-owned. It's not a franchise. I think it's an experienced crew. I think it's going to be the go-to location, the go-to place based on its location, but I think it could take a while to build up. But what I found in my reporting for that area, right around the corner, the building that used to be the Rutgers bookstore, New Jersey Books, they get $55 a square foot. And there are 3 franchises that the owner of the building, Saxum Real Estate, leases retail space downstairs to the Fruta Bowls, which is a large Fruta Bowls. I think it's over 2,000 square feet. I don't feel that business will make it there based on what I know about Fruta Bowls. And the size of the store. Then you have the Halal Guys, and the owner of the Halal Guys is the person that confirmed to me they're paying around $55 a square foot. And
So-
you have the Burger I Am there, which never got a liquor license.
Right. They had wanted one. They usually have them for that type of a store, but didn't get it. And so that's just a block up from the Reds site. And you're saying that the rent there you think is too high for these businesses to be successful, or at least some of them?
Yeah, I think the Burger I Am without the liquor license, which, as you said, they were supposed to get it according to franchise documents as well. It was required, so I'm a little bit stumped as to how they opened without it. But I think these are franchises, and I think the Halal Guys is probably, they opened the latest. I think they planned out, I think they may be the strongest, but the Fruta Bowls, I don't think has any chance, but just kind of looking at the rents, the $55 a square foot versus the 27 plus the common, but Reds
And they
will be a good spot.
They have not only a concessionaire's permit to sell booze, but they've got a decent amount of space to work with. So they are making it kind of like a beer hall, and they also have food. So I think they've got a chance. They've capitalized on locations near sporting, facilities. They're near MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, and they are near the Prudential Center, as you mentioned, in Newark. This one, not near any real athletics venues, but near Rutgers University and the New Brunswick train station and the hospital campuses and all that stuff. So, we'll see what the future holds. But before we move on to the next topic, just tell folks a little bit about what you learned about the family that runs it and the sort of the backstory behind Reds and how they ended up in New Brunswick, Dave.
Well, John Palsy is the father of Doug and Dan, who launched the business more than 20 years ago. He was the Red. His nickname was Red. It wasn't their last name. Their last name being Palsy. But he passed away more than a year ago. And I met the grandson when the Reds was under construction last winter. And then contacted Frank Pinto, who
The other partner?
Frank was really helpful. And I have to thank Frank for all the good information. And we, of course, had the story filed. You wanted to wait until they got closer to opening, so
Right. You wanted to run the story back when they were going to open in March, and it kept getting pushed back, and so we held off on the story until we could get a firm date. And I'm glad we did. We got the right date. It was August 19th, and you were the first to report on that date based on the response I got to a question at the Parking Authority meeting. So great work, Dave. Keep it up. You can read his story and so many others at our brand new website, newbrunswick.today. Please check it out. And if you can, make a donation to support the work we do here at New Brunswick Today. Dave, I'm going to ask you to stick around because we got a couple other stories to talk about that are in the same kind of wheelhouse, this real estate, downtown development, and also the whole business of the Parking Authority being a commercial landlord. So let's move on from Red's Beer Garden. If you walk underneath the railroad trestle at New Brunswick train station, you'll see what was once the Ferrin Mall and Parking Garage, an enormous structure, took up the better part of 2 city blocks in our downtown until it was demolished over the course of 2016 and 2017 to make way for something. We don't quite know what is going to happen there yet. And so the latest update is that I spoke to the acting county engineer. This is a man named Ronald Sendner. He's relatively new in the job, and asked him for an update about the contamination at that site. The site is, of course, contaminated with an oil plume from an underground storage tank that had been across the street on county property. And so the county is involved in the cleanup. And the quote from Mr. Sendner here is, quote, "They found a couple of hot spots. They're going to address the hot spots before they migrate." So they're trying to control the spread of this pollution, essentially oil that is here in our downtown at this giant hole in the ground. So Dave, you saw some reporting about this on another site, right? Let's talk about what you think is going to happen at the Ferrin site, and what maybe what, if any, insights you can provide as to that.
I'm waiting. I was interested in learning that Governor Murphy may be involved with the development there.
Yeah, so
you're talking about
last March he came to Rutgers, and they had a whole bunch of people talking about the site, saying how close it was to being ready, and you know that I believe the term shovel ready was used, and this whole thing really. They weren't able to answer any of the questions, right? Questions. Where's the money going to come from? Who are the tenants going to be? What's the timetable? Is it still contaminated? And many of these questions, the answer was not totally clear. But so I'm looking at this story you pointed out to me. This is our friend Chuck O'Donnell from Tap Into New Brunswick. And he wrote a story here just last week that says construction at the hub in New Brunswick should start within a year. So the hub, of course, is the name that they've been using to market this as yet, vague development. But he says that, the final sentence is interesting here. Is, although reports of construction on the former Ferrin Mall site date back to 2014, the DevCo, the developer president, Chris Palladino, characterized the project as being, quote, right on track. So what do you think, Dave? Is it right on track to have this giant contaminated wasteland in the middle of our downtown as the welcome mat for folks getting off the New Brunswick train station?
So how much remediation are they saying it needs?
It's not clear exactly how much, but what is clear is the ultimate solution is going to be to just dig it up, and it's one of those things where they want the developer to do it. There's this company DevCo. They're a nonprofit developer in the city that has built half of downtown and typically gets the favoritism of getting the best real estate including this space, has already been earmarked for them. And so what the city, the acting county engineer told me is that the plan is for DevCo to remove the contaminated soil when they dig the foundation for the building. But for that to happen, we would need plans for a building and the actual, hiring of people to do that excavation. We're still obviously a ways away from that. This Tap Into reporter seems to think it should be starting within a year, but I will believe it when I see it. I don't, we've been hearing about grand plans for this very site for over 10 years now. It was more than a decade ago when people were talking about building a basketball arena there. After Prudential Center's success in Newark, people wanted to see something like that at the Ferrin site or somewhere else in New Brunswick. That never materialized. The deck stayed for a while, but there have been all sorts of drawings, and I call it the Ferrin fantasy of all these visions of what could happen there, and we've been reporting on some of them as they come forward. Seemingly almost every year there's new drawings, but we saw this site as I don't know what they're thinking with what they're doing here, because it's been years of nothing going on there, and they were considering this a contender to be Amazon's second headquarters. I don't think
well, on that
they're being
note,
fully
I know
upfront with us.
It seems that Chris Palladino, the president of New Brunswick Development Corporation, was a bit vague, telling Chuck O'Donnell with New Brunswick Tap that we are pretty optimistic that we are going to turn this into a real job creation engine. And he said some partners in this will end up being some major corporate entities who will want to co-locate and be part of that ecosystem.
So no specifics, no names, no financing plan.
Been in contact with Amazon.
They did. New Brunswick submitted a proposal to have this site be the Amazon HQ2. It did not make it into the finals, and I'm not surprised. They basically took the same drawings they had been using for whatever the last fantasy was, and they just put the word Amazon on them. They added the word Amazon to those drawings and submitted them as if that was a viable plan.
So Palladino also told Chuck O'Donnell with Tap New Brunswick that help was coming from Governor Murphy to help attract tenants. And he said the governor continues to talk to major academic institutions around the world to have them interested in the project. And I think we are getting traction with research institutes around the world who are not only interested in New Jersey, but New Brunswick. Like they would just fit right into New Brunswick. But I think what you were saying, this could be more than a year off. What's new here?
Right, exactly. Where the same questions that reporters were asking at the March announcement with Governor Murphy and Dr. Barchi and all these other leaders, those same questions are still just as unanswered as they were in the past. There's no clarity as to who is going to actually be using this space and what for. And the real question that often gets left out is what's in it for the community, the New Brunswick community. Is there going to be anything for us? And that still is unclear. I'd like to see some more of a competitive process to decide what goes on at this site instead of what we have here, which is that the developer's already been chosen, without a real plan. So I think we should have multiple entities pushing to have different plans and pick the best one, as opposed to just putting DevCo in the driver's seat and letting them tell us when it's going to happen and what it's going to be. And that's really, unfortunately, what Governor Murphy and the city government have allowed to happen. The site is owned by the parking authority, so the parking authority could choose to pick a different developer or have a competitive process, but they haven't done that, and I don't expect them to, unfortunately. But the parking authority is a topic for another episode. We'll have to save that for later. But we do want to move on to another tenant of the parking authority. I guess we should say former tenant of the parking authority. This is another area where Dave's reporting was second to none. This is, of course, the Super Fresh supermarket, formerly known as Key Food Supermarket, that has been at that infamous location just across the Kirkpatrick Street from the site we were just discussing, the ruins of the Farron Mall. And so, Dave, on January 19th, you broke the story that not only was the supermarket behind on its rent to the tune of about $500,000, right? But also,
It was more than that
Oh,
by
more-
the time
yeah.
my story was published.
right. And so you also broke the story that they were shrinking in size, that they were downsizing from, I think it was
Yeah.
13 aisles to less than half of that. So tell us about your reporting on that and some of the things that
Well,
came after that.
Yeah, I had been trying to get an interview with Kevin Kim, the owner of that Super Fresh, and he owns others, of course, in Queens. He used to operate the Super Fresh in Plainsboro, but that wound up being a little bit difficult. So I spoke to the manager there, Jenny, and when I was working on my report, and she had mentioned that they were speaking to CVS pharmacy about
Sharing the space
yeah,
or
so
teaming up.
CVS, it sounded like they would have a store within a store. And by that time, they were already
CVS stands for?
consumer value stores.
There you go, you know it.
So I contacted CVS. They said they were not exploring any concept to operate inside the Super Fresh. That's in my New Brunswick Today article.
Right, you followed that lead. And
By that time, of course, the Super Fresh was already, they had already reduced their amount of space. And the question was, did the New Brunswick NBPA know about that? And they said they did.
And what kind of rents were they looking at there? Because we just to give you the backstory, I know you know it, Dave, but for our audience, this is not the first tenant of the space. The space opened around the same time that the Brother Jimmy's space we just discussed opened. It was 2012. I actually worked at the first supermarket there. It was called Fresh Grocer, and they famously fell behind in their rent and left town with their tail between their legs, owing more than $1 million to the parking authority. The space sat vacant for 18 months. Key Food got picked to be the next lucky tenant there, and they ended up. It was a weird thing. You covered it. They bought the rights to use a supermarket name that folks in this area probably remember from years ago as a trademark. It was at this time owned by A&P, which stands for
Great American Pacific Tea Company.
Well, and Atlantic and Pacific. Atlantic and Pacific. And so the A&P went out of business here, the whole chain, right? And they sold off some of the assets, including the brand name Super Fresh. So for some reason, the Key Food Company wanted to buy the name Super Fresh, and then just after about a year into their time in New Brunswick with the Key Food, I think they called it Key Food Marketplace. So a year into Key Food Marketplace, they changed names to be Super Fresh. I think a year and a half actually, but it was the same owner. So there were only two owners. This is a big point of confusion with how many supermarkets went out of business at this site. I think the answer is it's fair to say two, because Key Food and Super Fresh were the same owner, same guy, Kevin Kim. They just changed names as a result of that sort of unusual circumstance. And I think it was a bad move to change names, quite frankly. They should have just kept the name and kept building momentum with that. Instead, they changed to Super Fresh, which sounds a little bit like Fresh Grocer, which was the one we have all the bad memories from. So, at any rate, tell us what the rent was for the first tenants, Fresh Grocer, and what it is for the new guys who also didn't succeed.
Well, the Fresh Grocer, their monthly rent was almost 77,000.
Wow. Yeah.
So when then Key Foods came in, and Key Foods is the Kevin Kim's operation that wound up rebranding to Super Fresh.
And so they had initially had a discount on the rent for the first year or first 9 months.
So they were at about 20,400 a month. And then the Super Fresh was at 61,000.
Okay, so the rent ballooned. It tripled, more than tripled, around July 2016, and they stuck it out until just about this I think end of May, beginning of June was when the store closed for good. And I did a little live broadcast that first day that it was closed, but you did some very good follow-up reporting, and you can read that on the New Brunswick Today website.
Well, you have to remember that the Super Fresh was part of a co-op based in Staten Island, and that was
Key Food being a co-op.
Key
yes.
Food.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point they acquired the Super Fresh name, that co-op, in the bankruptcy, in the A&P bankruptcy.
Right, and they wanted to use it for the New Brunswick store and several others, but many of those have gone out of business too, or at least the one in Edison, right? The Super Fresh in Edison is no more.
Correct. That was Kevin Kim's store.
Yeah. So let's break it down, because we only have a few minutes left in the show today. What does this mean? You're a business guy. You follow all these different stories of different businesses succeeding or not succeeding. What does this mean for New Brunswick, or for how we get our food, or what we might expect to see in the years to come, Dave?
It doesn't sound like there will be another supermarket there. You would agree with that, correct? And
I think so. I think
NBPA has said they're speaking to considering making it a shared office space. When I talked to Kevin Kim, the owner of the Super Fresh that went out of business, he made some points about Walmart being a strong grocer down the road.
He said that was taking some of his business away.
Right.
Walmart is popular these days.
So
I don't think any offices are going to want to really set up in this space, for the simple reason that there's almost no windows on that ground floor space. It's a very, in my view, poorly designed attempt at a supermarket, and it's part of the reason that the supermarkets weren't able to succeed there was that it was done in a way where there's only one entrance. There's no entrance on the backside on Patterson Street. It's only a loading dock. So the only entrance you have to get to is kind of in an inconvenient place. There's no crosswalk there, and now you're across from giant wasteland. And so most of the folks who go there have to park, and then you've got to go up that big curly Q entrance, and a lot of people, that was a turnoff for them. So I think that the only thing, unfortunately, that could happen with it in terms of commercial use would be like a call center or something where you don't want to have a lot of windows. And so it's unfortunate that our downtown now has this space that's really not as useful as it could be. But I don't see a supermarket choosing to go down that road again. It seems like we know where that road ends.
Yes, it will be interesting to see what interest there is and whether a large corporation with deep pockets will consider that space, which surely the Superfresh and the Key Foods and the Fresh Grocer, even though Fresh Grocer may have been more capitalized than Kevin Kim, and Kevin Kim's company was surely not that, and I think that was revealed by the emails that I reviewed between Kevin Kim and Mitch Karen at the New Brunswick Parking Authority. Kevin Kim seemed to be approaching it as though he was kind of like doing a service by staying there even at a lower rent, or by not paying much rent at all. And I don't know how New Brunswick Parking Authority was thinking as far as renting it with those types of rents, which I think the business is just not there. I mean, they also have to deliver food, and
the delivery was a whole other thing you covered. They had some issues with that.
Isn't the supermarket business a low margin business?
Very much so. That's what we hear.
It'll be interesting, again, if they attract a large corporation, even a large chain like Walgreens, which is closing stores in New Jersey now.
Yeah, I
CVS.
wouldn't expect them to be there. CVS seems like they don't want it. I have a feeling, a lot of the community members would like a fancier store like a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's, but I have a feeling that if that was going to happen, it would have happened instead of the Key Food tenant. I think that they tried their best. They gave it a second try, but because of the way the store is designed, it was not going to succeed. It's unfortunately doomed to fail due to poor planning and poor leadership. And I gotta just wrap it up now and end it on that, because there is so much more to talk about in our city, and we'll be doing another one of these podcasts real soon. So my thank you to all of you for listening. My thank you to the special guest, Dave Schatz, our amazing business reporter. And we'll leave you with some audio from the grand opening of the Fresh Grocer back in November of 2012. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.
My name is Chris Palladino. I'm the president of New Brunswick Development Corporation. I certainly welcome everyone to Wellness Plaza and the third scheduled ribbon cutting for the Fresh Grocer in New Brunswick. What many of you don't know is the story of the day that the mayor pulled the pin out of the hand grenade. We had a design for this facility. We had developed the partnership with the Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital for the Fitness and Wellness Center. We'd worked out all the details with the Parking Authority, our partner and soon-to-be landlord. And we'd actually even figured out how to pay for it. But, the folks who are kind of the supermarket aristocracy in New Jersey, who think that all supermarkets should be out on some highway and have 4 nail salons connected to them and 6 acres of parking, were not cooperating. And I was in the mayor's office, and we had talked about the design, and I said, look, as soon as we get a tenant, we can really get going. And as I was walking out the door, he said, just start building it. And I looked at him and I said, without a tenant? And those of you who know the mayor well know that he's a big baseball fan, so he delivered the line from the greatest baseball movie of all time, said, if you build it, they will come. Now, I didn't know to laugh or to get out the door, but without missing a step, he said, Chris, look, this is the greatest city in New Jersey. we've got a growing, diverse population. We have a need for a grocery store. We've always had a need for a grocery store. We've got 2 great universities. We've got 2 teaching hospitals. We've got a medical school. We've got commuters. We've got a growing population of people who come to work here. We will find an operator. And if not, you'll learn to stock the shelves.